A multi-billion-dollar anti-aging industry telling us that somehow we have failed if we grow older. What if there are things that get better as we get older? We care less about what other people think about us. We have a greater potential for connections with other people. And this is one that people don't really realize.
This conversation is so important. Dr. Burnight's work and her warm spirit has forever changed me. JoySpan gives us the secret to aging with joy, autonomy, dignity, and vitality, and how to relate to everybody with respect and deep listening, no matter where they land on the continuum of this journey called life. Let's dive in. Dr. Kerry, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
So we'll kick off with some rapid fire questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
So you've worked with thousands of elders. What have they taught you about the meaning of time?
Older adults have taught me that time really means different things to different people because the experience of longevity is really unique to the person.
If you could tell the world one truth about aging that no one thinks about, what would it be?
It would be that you have so much more control over what your older age will look like than you can imagine.
Is the fountain of youth actually joy?
In my opinion, yes.
You've spent decades studying aging. What's the single most life-extending factor that no one talks about?
In gerontology, the study of aging, the single most under-recognized and underutilized sort of lever that we don't really even realize that we have is our ability to choose how we react to what life brings.
Well, so many small world connections with you, which I love. I have your beautiful book here, JoySpan, The Art and Science of Thriving in Life's Second Half, which is just a joy to read and so inspiring. And I turned it over and I see that one of my best friends since kindergarten or first grade, Katie Fike, who's also a gerontologist, wrote, one of these stellar reviews.
It's been every step of the way in the book journey has been just an incredible sort of opening. And I've come to believe that it's because this is a book that we need right now. And that's why the doors have continued to just open. And it became a New York Times bestseller. And I never would have imagined a book on growing older and on longevity would do that. But it's that we need it.
Yeah, we really do. And so tell us how did JoySpan come about? It is so important right now. I know with my generation, all of our parents are getting to that chapter you talk about, this phase in life where, we're having to become caretakers. And also we have witnesses, or we have examples, beautiful examples like Betty, your mother, who teaches us how to age well. So where did JoySpan come from?
It came from the fact that for 16 years, I ran an elder abuse forensic center. And it was a first in the nation. And in Santa Ana, we, like so many other places, like every place, have awful, awful suffering, financial exploitation, neglect, abuse. And so I was immersed in suffering. And as I would drive home from work every day, I would just be sobbing into my work shirt. And I loved being able to help and be there and try to improve the situation. But it became immediately clear that it's not okay to wait until the suffering happens, because we have the information of how to prevent the suffering and indignity and humiliation of older age by getting years ahead. And the one thing about all of us is that we're all aging. So you could be 10, you could be 100, we're all aging. And so the time to start on fortifying ourselves for these 100-year lives is as early as possible. So I really went into the literature and thought, why do some people thrive in longevity and other people not so much? And there are actually hundreds of thousands of studies in all countries, and yet it wasn't really getting out to mainstream kind of Barnes and Noble type of books. And I think the big reason for it is that all the studies had all these, like one would look at generosity, one would look at humor, one would look at friendship. And there are thousands of variables, but we can't do thousands of things. We needed a way to take that information and make it like, okay, that I can do. And so it turns out with what I'm calling JoySpan, and that's important. So lifespan is how long you live. Health span is how long you live in good health. And both of those matter. We want to live long lives. We want to live in as best health as possible. But a long life, even a long life in good health, doesn't mean much if you don't love your life. And I chose the word, you could call it well-being span, but it really was not very catchy. And the American Psychological Association defines joy as well-being and life satisfaction. And I think that definition differentiates it. I'm not talking about like ecstasy every minute, and definitely not toxic positivity, which is denying the very real parts about aging and life. But joy, as defined as well-being, is achievable. And so the book and my research is about what are the things that we can be doing today to put ourselves on the path to a long life that we would like to live.
I love that. Yeah. And I was flying back from Spain and listening to your book on tape. It was a 12-hour flight and
oh goodness,
in the middle of the day. So it wasn't like sleep time. So I got to listen to your book, the whole flight back, which is amazing. And I thought it was really, you defined the difference between joy and happiness. And I loved that. I think a lot of people don't really have that clear delineation. So can you share that?
Yes. And I got that delineation from a beautiful book that is a collaboration between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And that's called The Book of Joy. And in that book, those incredible spiritual leaders, they say that happiness is circumstantial and dependent on outside forces. And so it comes and it goes. And we all know that. We're happy, we're not happy, we're happy. And joy, unlike happiness, isn't. So joy can be present amid really hard challenges because joy is more of an inside out job. And so in that regard, I thought it was perfect for growing older because I don't know anybody who has had a long life who has not had challenges and some really hard challenges. And so sometimes people say, oh, I just want to age gracefully. I don't actually see it being all that graceful. I think it can be really rough and yet still joyful. And in my patients who are traveling life with joy, it's such a difference. And in my opinion, we really can handle whatever life brings us when we have these resources to tap into that are largely internal.
So yeah, as you're talking, I'm like, I've been working lately just on my own personal, I want to be less at the mercy of external circumstances. I want to have that constant joy. And my practices are gratitude. I can always turn to things to find that I'm grateful for, and I think that keeps me in my baseline of joy is a lot higher, and then of course, external circumstances can make me ecstatic and extremely happy in the moment, but it is like this every day, and so, but I would say with these practices, your baseline of just like that joy expands, and elevates. So share with us kind of the pillars of your work and JoySpan and what some of the practical applications or how to cultivate that joy.
Yes.
in your book.
So what the research showed is that the thousands of variables that predict why some people seem to thrive in longevity, regardless of circumstance, group into 4 areas. And I called them the sort of JoySpan matrix. It's these 4 elements that come together. And there are 4, and I've tried so hard to make them an acronym because it would have been so cool. And it was hours and hours, and yet one day I had to finally concede it really is just the words that it is. So for people to remember it, it starts with a G and ends with a G. So that is something. And then in the middle is CA. And for me, I'm in California, so it does give a little bit. So it's not as great as all the other things I tried. Joy and love and everything you can think of. But so knowing that it starts with a G, the first empirically verified way to thrive all lifelong is grow. So it's critical for humans to continue on this path of growth. And that's, I think, just largely what you are doing and teaching and sharing and the point of all your efforts. So sometimes when people get older, they sort of like, oh, well, that ship has sailed. And I think part of the reason that people stop growing is because they buy into an inaccurate narrative that aging is all decline. So the most prevalent mindset is the decline aging mindset, which spells out damn, which is very fitting because with the damn mindset, you think everything's going to get worse as I get older. I'm going to have, say, less relevance, less purpose, less attractive, less energy, less. And the reason we think that makes sense. And that is that we have a steady diet of anti-aging messaging telling us that we need to fear growing older, and that fear sells. So it's a multi-billion-dollar anti-aging industry telling us that somehow we have failed if we grow older. And when we step away, we think, oh my gosh, 100% we're going to die, and that is natural and part of life. And in doing so, you do grow older. And so when you have this mindset that, wow, what if there are things that get better as we get older? But it's not lucrative because it doesn't sell anything. But the literature happily does show us that as we get older, we care less about what other people think about us. And that is quite liberating. I'm 56 now, so I'm starting to get that. And I look forward to it continuing. We also have greater emotional regulation. We don't have such get so distraught about things and falling to pieces if we're late and that kind of thing. We have a greater potential for a deepening spirituality and growth and appreciation of beauty and nature and music and connections with other people. We have a greater potential for improved problem solving. And this is one that people don't really realize. And part of the reason is the integration of our left and right hemisphere of our brain. And we're drawing upon experiences. And so I have this story that I like so well about, and we're still in the grow category, but this growth in problem solving is really best exemplified with this story. So I have this friend who's a professor at Harvard. Every week, he picks up his parents at the train station. And
I love this story, by the way. I was going to ask you about it. It's so good.
Yeah. And so he was late one day, and what happened is they would take the train and he would then pick them up in his car and then take them to dinner at his house and then drive them home afterwards. This day, Mr. Harvard's son was late. Parents in their 90s stranded at the platform, was just dumping snow on them. They were in their 90s, and it was before the ubiquitous cell phone era, so they didn't have phones. So they're standing there. They look over, they see a pizza place. they carefully walk over the pizza place and they say, we'd like to have a pizza delivered to our son's house. And when you deliver that pizza, we'd like to ride along in the car with it.
It's so good.
My friend Dr. Kung gets to his house and his parents and dinner are all safely there at his house. And I always think of it as such an example of problem solving, but you don't hear about it with the loud noise about supposedly everything getting worse. You don't realize that the things that get better. And when you do realize how much can get better as you get older, you lean into it and recognize you can continue to grow. So that means doing hard things. That means finding what you're interested in, what you're curious about, and then going for it. And not letting yourself believe this message of like, oh, it's too late for me to learn piano, or it's too late to try to start this business. It's not too late. Not with these. I was just with a patient today who's 108. Wow. So I told my mom, who is 96, I said, listen, I used to be impressed with 96, but now with my 108-year-old friend. So
yeah, you got at least 12 more years. Didn't you?
Exactly. You should start a business. And so the first one is grow. And there's, practices in the book and things that we can be doing to make sure that we're continuing to grow. And just ask yourself, like, what am I doing that is hard or out of my comfort zone?
Yes, I love that.
So that brings us to the second one, the C, and that is connect. We all know and have heard by now that social connection is one of the greatest predictors of how long you live, how healthy you live physically, and then how much you enjoy your life. And that is, I ran into a friend recently who is a real introvert and just a lovely friend. And she said, am I hosed? Because I don't really like hanging out with people. I like to be alone. And so the good news is no, introverts are not hosed, because the definition of loneliness is wanting more social interaction than you currently have, which means you can feel lonely in a marriage, in a group of people, in your friend group, or you can also not feel lonely with not as many people around. And so it's different for every person, but it takes a real honesty to ask yourself, do I wish I had more and deeper friendships? Do I have, or just different friendships? Like, is this friend group feeding my soul? And in doing that, you can be quite proactive in your social connection. And there is a researcher, Dr. Dunbar, who created something so simple, but you can think of it like concentric, like a bullseye. And what he found was that we can hold about 5 people quite closely, and then 10 in the next group, and then 15 out and out. And he suggests that we write in the circle who is in each of the rings. And in doing so, it does make you realize, like, my 5 closest people, maybe 3 of them, I feel like we have this real emotional support and also logistical support. Maybe these 2, not so much. Maybe we've grown apart, or maybe it wasn't terrific to begin with. And you can kind of think of it like your social portfolio. So in the same way we kind of take inventory of our financial portfolio, we can do the same with our friendships. And the second half of it is when I have patients come to me and say, I am lonely because nobody calls me, nobody makes plans, I haven't anything to look forward to that is fun. And so I start by being a good listener and, sufficient empathy. But then I ask the question, tell me about the plans that you have made, the texts the calls, the emails, the cards, and they go, oh, no, I don't do that. And then I go, okay, now we're talking. We actually all have to, what I call, be that friend, that one who is quite proactive and putting the effort in. And it can be little things like you could just go next door to your next door neighbor's house and say, I've got some lemons in my backyard and I wondered if you might like a bag. Like these little tiny micro connections are what form connections. And again, recognizing your value as an older person helps in doing this. Because also some patients have said, oh, well, I mean, I don't think my neighbors are all younger. I don't think they would want to be friends with me. So I said, wait, stop. Let's talk about that. Why do you think that? And then we dig into it and we realize, oh my goodness, you have so much to offer. These younger people, they're the lucky ones. And which is absolutely true, because as a 56-year-old, I've been 46 and 36 and 26 and 16. I have already been all of those. So,
yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about grow. We have talked about connect. So the next one is adapt. And adapting is a crucial strength that we start today at any age of recognizing that yes, things will be changing. I promise you. And there will be challenge. So even if you have the perfect physical health regime and do every possible thing, there will be changes in vision and hearing, conceivably a diagnosis that you didn't expect at all, or the passing of our loved ones. So that's something that people think, oh, it's morbid to think about the fact that either I will pass away before my husband or my husband will pass away before me. But it's not actually morbid. It's actually, that is the case unless you pass on the same day, which isn't terribly, I mean, that's its own tragedy, isn't it? So if I think about the fact that if we go with statistics that I'm going to have extra years on earth than my husband, I can start to think, okay, gosh, yes, my friendships really matter a lot. It matters a lot that I know how to pay my finances and I know how to reset the blocker thing when the electricity goes off, like all the stuff. And yet when you don't think about it at all, when you think, I'm not going to think about anything possible, I'm not going to think about growing older, I'm not going to think about hard things, you're actually setting yourself up for more problems than going ahead and thinking about it. It's okay. And when those things happen, not if, when the hard stuff happens, we can have a toolbox, much of which you already completely know and are doing, and that is internal coping mechanisms and external coping mechanisms. And one, for example, is it's so easy when something is wrong. And I'll give an example in my case. Our 25-year-old daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor right before she was going to leave for medical school. And it was surprising to me because I hadn't allowed myself to think that things happen to our kids and grandkids. Of course they do, and I should have, because that is part of being human. And for a time, that's all I thought about. I mean, it was just brain tumor, brain tumor, brain tumor. That's all that I was just thinking about. And I would just focus on it, obsess it all day, every day. It was the only thing that existed. And that caused the suffering. Because when, like you said, I instead thought, you're going to drown and you're going to bring everyone you know with you unless you find a way to look at all of the other things. And that's a gratitude practice. And that is every single day thinking, yes, there are always things wrong, but there are always things right. And so in my journal, I just kept writing and writing and writing and reinforcing. Wow, my daughter doesn't have this. My son doesn't have this. I have a bed. I have a home. I have friends. And when you start doing it, even begrudgingly at first, that rewires you to see the good. And that's how we adapt, by not looking at the thing that hurts us so much exclusively.
Yeah.
Yes, look at it, grieve, cry, throw up your fists, but also recognize that that's really not actually solving the problem. And it's making it worse. So that's adapting, and there are exercises in the book that are internal and external coping mechanisms. And then a way to kind of do a checklist. Like, have I tried this thing and did it work for me? And so because sometimes when you're in crisis, it's hard to think. And so some of this pre-planning of like, what is in my toolbox that will enable me to cope?
Yeah. These practical tools are so important to have. That's why this book is very helpful because
thanks. And I instead of making a separate workbook, I put everything all into one place. And so you can write right in the book and mark it all up.
This time of year is both beautiful and overwhelmingly busy. And for me, what I wear closest to my body really sets the tone for how I feel. That's why I've been reaching for a Honey Love all season long. The V-neck bra is incredible under everything from chunky knits to a fitted holiday dress. It lifts, smooths, and supports without the need for underwire and no back bulge, which is my biggest pet peeve. Just natural shape and total ease. And their Cloud Embrace bra is probably my favorite discovery of the year. It's wireless, padded just enough, and it honestly feels like wearing a soft hug. I wear it all day, and I'm still comfortable by night. And if you're in need of some shapewear that makes you feel right and tight under those fancy holiday fits, no one does it better than Honey Love. Treat yourself or someone you love to the most comfortable and innovative bras and shapewear on earth. Save 20% at honeylove.com/heal. That's honeylove, HONEYLOVE.com/heal. And after checkout, let them know Heal with Kelly sent you, because comfort is the foundation of confidence. Before we dive back in, I want to share something that has made my wellness routine so much simpler, because I know so many of you are on the same journey with me, trying your best to live cleaner, reduce toxins, and choose products that actually support your healing. But here's the truth. Researching wellness products can be overwhelming. There are a million brands, a million labels, hidden ingredients, greenwashing everywhere, and unless you have endless time to dig through every claim, it's almost impossible to know what's actually clean versus what's just cleverly marketed, and what actually works in a sea of products. This is exactly why I partnered with the Swell Score to create my own curated storefront. Swell Score is a doctor-led marketplace that tests everything: supplements, skincare, home goods, detox tools, you name it. A toxicologist literally verifies purity and safety. So whether it's the Echo Hydrogen water bottle for deep hydration and recovery, or the Anima Mundi Rose Body Oil, which is just luscious and calming, you never have to guess. And they don't stop there. SwellScore also built a wellness VIP membership. Anyone who's shopped for clean wellness products knows how expensive it can get. This membership genuinely helps. So, if you're tired of feeling overwhelmed by labels and just want one trusted place to shop clean, vetted wellness essentials, head to the link in the show notes and visit Kelly's SwellScore storefront. And don't forget to use my code HEAL20 for 20% off your first order.
So we started with G, then we went to CA, so we have grow, connect, adapt, and then we're on to our final G, and that is give. And give ties into the purpose literature. I have a colleague at UCLA, Steve Cole, and he's an epigeneticist, so why some genes express and others don't. I like to think of genes like a piano key. You can have a gene, but it has to be expressed. And so his research was what predicts gene expression, epigenetics. And he put everything that we would think of in that study. And I think he kind of was like, well, I'll put a couple other ones like soft measures. And one of them was the extent to which people felt like their life had purpose. And what he found surprised him, and it was how robust at an epigenetic level it was, holding all other variables constant to feel like your life had purpose. And it impacted inflammation, which we know is such a predictor of both acute and chronic disease, as well as antiviral load. So then when people hear that, they go, well, yikes, because I'm not sure what my purpose is. So we need to dig in of what is purpose. And it's actually good news. Purpose isn't this great big thing of, curing cancer, although that would be a wonderful purpose. But it's really defined as giving what you have to give, and that recognizing your value and that all of us have something to give, even in really hard circumstances. Another of my current patients has lost the ability to speak, but her mind is still sharp and her eyes still absolutely glow. And every time I come to visit her where she lives in a skilled nursing facility, there's always people around her. And I sat the other day kind of waiting for my turn to get to her, and I realized what it was, is she was giving what she had, and that is incredible listener. And her ability to continue to listen and her eyes flicker as you're speaking, and who she is comes through so much, even though she hasn't words, that she's continuing to give. And that really gives me a lot of hope that regardless of if I don't have my vision or if I am no longer walking or all the different things that life might bring, I'll always have something to give, and therefore I'll have purpose, and therefore I'll have joy. Like, oh, thank heaven for that.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, I mean, so much. Thank you. So yeah, I'm never gonna G, California. G.
I know it. And wouldn't it be so great if I could come up with something catchier? There's a nice analogy.
Yeah.
Yes, gag. So a colleague of mine, Vonda Wright, she's an orthopedic surgeon, and she studies physical strength. And so there are 4 components of physical strength. And those components are our cardiovascular health, our muscle strength, our flexibility, and our agility. So we know that there are 4 aspects that you start working on as young as possible. And it's just the little daily things. You don't do one workout and then check it off the box. It's just little every day, starting as early as possible. Do those things and you will maintain physical strength. And these 4 things, which are all verbs because they all take action, do those little things every day, and you will be then on a different path than you would be had you not attended to those kinds of things. So when people say, oh gosh, so-and-so is aging so beautifully, and they're just so lucky to have that genetics. What we know from the research is that genetics is roughly 14 to 23% of the equation, which means the overwhelming control is up to us, that we have some control in it. And it doesn't mean we ever blame anyone for having really a rough go of it, because there's a lot of hard things, but it's also saying we're not just victims to aging as all decline, is that we really play a role in it. And I love this. I'm so always inspired by psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, because, he was in a concentration camp, the worst possible human devastation. And what he wrote is that regardless of circumstance, we can maintain our spiritual freedom. And I thought, wow, even with ALS, even with, a lot of these things that we really don't want, there is the potential to maintain spiritual freedom, because we aren't just these meat sacks that is our body. And for me, that thought's really liberating.
I agree. If he can find that freedom to, that last freedom is to choose how we respond to life's challenges. That alone unleashes vitality, and that freedom is everything, right? That's the highest value for me.
Yes, exactly. And it feels less scary and less like I think the old message was how not to age. Like, you just somehow want to just cling to youth and don't age. But I feel a real change in society that I'm wanting to be a part of, and that is a new question, which is how to age, how to age with beauty, with vitality and relevance and humor and humility and kindness and resilience. Because not aging, that doesn't work. You You're going to age if you're lucky, unless you die. So it kind of is how to age. And it isn't so that you can somehow fool people into thinking that you're a different age than you are. In fact, a lot of my patients who are thriving in longevity, they're delighted to tell you that they're 92.
Yeah.
Because it's a 92 that we go, oh gosh, I want that kind of 92.
Yeah. And I love the correlation between the 4 things to do for physical strength. And then you have the roadmap to like unleash vitality. If you, every day, you just do a little thing that like grows, like do something that, you know, pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And there are these micro moments, push yourself to connect in a way that you hadn't, you know, before. And if you're doing these things, you're literally just boosting your vitality and, you know, adapting and knowing that, okay, like I come with these decades of wisdom that actually makes me a good problem solver. So I'm going to order that pizza and I'm going to hop in the delivery car, you know, like, and then giving. I mean, there's so many studies, like when people are stuck in their healing journeys, because, you know, and I'm sure you've experienced this with your daughter and everything. It's like, when we put so much focus on ourselves, we tend to like close the aperture so much we get stuck and we can't see, we're not open to these like miracles and possibilities because we're just so fixated, right?
Yes.
And the antidote to that is to take your attention off yourself and give to someone else. And there are studies upon studies upon studies about what biochemistry and what vitality and energy that releases in your body. Giving truly does give back to the giver tenfold. It's
exactly that's exactly it. And it is such a win-win. And in a world today, we really need that more than ever, you know, of people to be like stepping out of this self-obsession and giving to others. And then wonderfully in doing so, that, like you said, that research on not only the giver's high, but just what it does on a physiological and spiritual level that changes our lives. And it's those things that people talk about after you pass away. So as a gerontologist, I go to a ton of funerals, and I actually really, really like funerals. And people go, oh, you're a weirdo. But actually, it's quite beautiful to see how lives play out. And people don't ever talk about like, oh, that guy was so rich, or oh my, she was pretty, or my, what a VO2 max that fellow had. Like instead, they'll share a time when I just went to one the other day, and it was just the whole church was packed, and people were telling stories that other people didn't know, like these hidden kindnesses that he did. And it was so moving that I just cried the whole time. And so much so that I was like, this is weird. I'm not related. Like I'm a weirdo, but it was the beauty. I wasn't like, oh, I'm sad. It was just like, whoa, I see the difference that each life can make in these very hidden moments that only those people who were sharing that moment knew about.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, as you're saying, it's so beautiful. You're not a weirdo. You're actually reframing. You pointed out to me in the book, and this was like something I wasn't even aware of because I took the test and failed miserably, about this like ageism and this internalized ageism. And we, you know, even me at 46, I'm like already dreading, you know, gravity and figuring out how, like, when am I going to schedule my facelift in 10 years? Like, is it at fit? You know what I mean? Like, this is a mental illness. Like,
it is.
You're bringing this sacred, beautiful, empowered way to age. And then, you know, at funerals, it's something that's inevitable. It's these celebrations of the impact these people had on us. So you're not a weirdo. You're actually bringing light to something that really needs to shift, especially as a majority of the population is entering that phase, you know, or is already there.
I think 10,000 more of us in the U.S. turned 65. So I think of it like kind of, there was the I Love Lucy where she's eating chocolates and it's like the conveyor belt speeds up. That's it. There's so many of us. And sometimes it's conceptualized like, oh, it's going to be this silver tsunami of older people. But I think it's much more aptly an opportunity of people who, if we can stop, and I love that you bring up internalized ageism, because we all, and myself included, we all have it. And it started really young. So when you were little, your loving family maybe told you some fairy tales, and all of those fairy tales feature an old lady, and she might, like Hansel and Gretel, she might eat you, like there's what we've been told is that old is bad, old is scary. And then, but also we think about, there used to be a time where we would say, oh, women can't run a company, or women couldn't be in, politics, and we've come to realize that is nonsense. Like, what a wonderful world it would be if we had more women leading. And the same is true with aging, that we need to actually say, I'm done with this thing that old is bad. Mm-hmm. Because I think some of my least joyful patients are people who have bought into it and are doing everything they can to somehow like stay young, but you're not actually fooling anybody, right? You can do all the stuff, and we don't judge it, of course, but like where it's coming from is often a place that of like not enough, as opposed to like, I'm enough. And I have been every other age. I was giving an analogy the other day. It's like you've had the years of life are like M&Ms, and you have this whole big handful of M&Ms, and everybody, you don't know exactly how many you have, and everybody has a little bit different because each one's a year. But I'm going through, I'm eating each one year after year, and then you think, oh, that's not fair. I wish I was a younger age. No, you have been that age. You ate that M&M. It's totally fair. We all have the same amount. Move forward and be grateful for the M&Ms that you have left.
Yeah. Totally. And that's why it's so important. That's why I totally agree with you that joy, doing things, and even if it's finding new things, or, like you said, if your partner passes away before you, it's like freedom, like of this time where you can pick up a new hobby, or, start to knock off your bucket list. It's like looking, and I'd like to talk about a little bit too is, I interviewed Dan Buettner of the Blue Zones, and he has studied centenarians. And what just stuck out to me was this like isolation and kind of like breakdown of the family system and this village. Like the ones that live the longest and thriving have the tightest, like the older people, the elders of the village, these smaller communities that are living the longest and healthiest lives. They have so much, they're looked at with so much value because they're helping, they're involved every day. Maybe the grandmother's cooking, or they're helping raise the kids, and they're the ones, the passers down of traditions. And given modern society and cars and planes, like the family, that cohesion has separated. So we're living in these isolated homes, and we maybe see our, people like 4 times a year, or it's obviously there's a whole spectrum, but that just dawned on me. It's like, that's what's happening. And so that's in these, and that's why so many people are ending up in older homes, because that loneliness, that perceived lack of value in their older age is really leading to the demise of their health and their happiness and joy. And
you're exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's why my hope would be that people could start early. Because some people have a built-in family system, but a lot of people don't. Their family is spread all over the place. And so by being kind of proactive and recognizing, a lot of times you kind of need to build it yourself, right? And so I have patients who have, in their maybe 60s and 70s, we're the ones offering, like, hey, next door neighbor, you're going to chemo. Could I drive you to chemo? And then you're kind of proactively creating support networks, both physically, like logistically, and also emotionally, so that even if you don't have a family, that you have kind of gotten in the proverbial driver's seat to build one. So part of the book tour was in the UK, and something I noticed in the UK and that I loved is that everybody of all ages, after the day was over, and I mean, it was pretty early, about 5, would then meet up at the pub. And drinking isn't great for us, but gosh, that social connection was great for us. And we were all there, and we were high-fiving and laughing, and it was a Tuesday. And then they say, okay, see you tomorrow. And so I do think recognizing that we are in our society, if you live in a society that is drive into your garage, close the garage door, and go in and sit on your couch for dinner, which sometimes is awfully familiar to me, I need to be more proactive on how am I going to, connect with people in a way that I make the effort. And so maybe that means like connecting with your faith community or volunteering or going to lectures or offering. I have another patient who recognized she's alone and her family lives far away. And I thought it was so brilliant. She noticed that there's a single mother on her street who has 3 children. And so this friend of mine, who I think she's now about 82, when she saw her out, she said, I remember when I was making dinner and the kids were little and it was so rough to sort of juggle everybody and try to be safe. I would love to come over at dinner making time and I could hold or just supervise any of your kids if you would want. I'm available. And sometimes it takes some bravery to put yourself out there. And sometimes you got to kiss a few frogs. Like maybe the first person will say like, no thanks. But ultimately, in her case, this mother was delighted and it was life-changing for both of them. So the children are in love with their new friend, the neighbor who comes over before dinner time. And the mother feels so good that she can focus on the meal. And my friend's so happy. So it does take a little proactivity these days because it's not just kind of spoon-fed to us.
Yeah. But this book and your work is so, because this ripple effect, this is why this conversation is important to me, because your book and your work has reminded me how life-giving that is to connect with my parents even more often. I mean, I literally am probably a terrible daughter. My mom would love to talk to me every day. I don't reach out. I need to more. I've always been like that. So now that I know what I know because of this book, I'm going to make more effort. And it's not that big of an effort, especially when you know the payoff and the vitality that both of us will get by keeping that village together and checking in. And then, like you said, in the community where I am, even just volunteering or it's so important. And it's when you realize the science behind how far it goes. My friend Annie, I'm going to give her a shout out. She's also friends with Katie Fike. She volunteers with older people in her neighborhood and walks them to errands. And I was always like, gosh, that's so noble. And now I'm just like, wow, it's life-giving to both of them, It's so cool.
Yes, and they're ahead of her in that journey, and you do learn so much. And one way adult children, so people, let's say in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s, and if you have older parents, sometimes it's too easy to think that we, younger people, need to help the older people. But if you can reframe it as, I wonder how also for example, mom could help me. Mm-hmm. And that's a real win-win. And so I do that with my mom. I'll think of something and there, things come up once you open your mind to it. And I go, oh, Mom, okay, I'm doing this. Can you help me think this through? Or Mom, can you come over because I want to address all these Christmas cards? Mom, could you help, to think about of the older generation helping us, that too is a win-win because it's purpose and, and then helpful as well. And one thing I want to add when we're thinking about people who are older than we are is there's a continuum where there's safety on the one side. We want, of course, our family members to be safe. But on the other side of the continuum is autonomy, like that ability to do what we want. And so I want to caution your listeners, if you're ever thinking, oh gosh, now we're at a phase where it's role reversal, where I'm the parent and they are the child. That's a big red flag, because it's never a time when you get older that you become a child. You're more adult than ever. You may have care needs. You may have some cognitive impairment. But that model that we have of like, I'm the parent now and you're the child, that causes absolute friction and stubbornness and heartache. And so that's something I always want to put out, is if you are having those thoughts about, oh, I'm the parent now, to take a minute and really kind of think it through, that in fact, your relationship with your parents will be so much better when you keep them as the parent role and you are not.
So say a little bit more about that, because I think so many of us just have bought into that belief. And again, this book kind of opened my eyes to all the age kind of biases I have and negative bias towards aging. And like, I would love to hear some guidance or just some tips on like how to maintain that respect and reverence, even as the care needs get bigger and they seem maybe potentially more helpless and in that kind of childlike phase, but it's not. Like I would love to know just a little bit of guidance or tips on how to stay in that reverence and
I would love to. I'm really interested in this topic, and I've had to learn a lot along the way about it. So if we think about teenagers, developmental imperative is to pull away from their parents at a certain age. And luckily we know that. Like, oh, okay, the reason that they need to pull away is developmentally, that's what they're supposed to be doing. And they're even rolling their eyes at you or like, I got it, Mom, I know. We can understand that. But there is less known in the everyday society about the developmental imperative of older adults. So developmentally, as we grow older, our imperative is twofold. One is legacy, like what did my time here mean? And the other is autonomy. I am going to do my life the way I want to do it. So when you realize, wow, I haven't gotten to be 90 yet. So of course I don't understand that. If we, from the research, understand, oh, legacy is what people are thinking about and autonomy, then when I, as adult daughter, and I'll tell you how I did it wrong. My mom was in the hospital for quite some time with a condition called C. diff, which was terrible.
Yeah.
And she, when she came home, I thought, erroneously, that I would be so helpful and that I would set up a hospital bed in her bedroom is only upstairs, that I would put a hospital bed downstairs so she wouldn't have to go up those hard stairs. But I didn't ask her. And so she came home and I was all proud, like, here's the hospital bed downstairs. And she was so looking forward to getting home. And I had taken away something that was sacred to her, which was her home and her autonomy to decide where she's going to sleep in her own home. So she took one look at it and said, send this away right now. And my first reaction was like, oh, what? This is so nice. I know better than you do. But in fact, I don't, because I haven't been the age and stage that she has been yet. And she was in the right. And so we sent it home. She went up the stairs, got into her own bed that she'd been dreaming about for the 2 months that she was in the hospital. And all was well when I recognized that I was in the wrong. And so, like, one little taste is when you're using your phone. So some days now, my kids are in their mid to late 20s, and I'll be doing something, and then maybe one of my kids will take my phone out of my hand while I'm using it to help me do it faster.
Oh, yeah.
And it gives me a little taste, like, I do not like how that feels. I was almost there. Let me do it. This is my phone. Please don't take my phone out of my hand. And I think that's a tiny example that is exacerbated by me deciding to put different furniture in my mom's house without asking her. And then I still didn't learn the lesson, and I hired a caregiver without having a really proper conversation about it. And so she, when the caregiver came, asked the caregiver to leave. And I hear all the time people say, oh, my mom is so stubborn. She's not doing the right thing. And I always have to say, a lot of times that thought that people are stubborn is a flag for you to think like, wait a minute, what role do I have in this? And so in my case, I sat down, I said, Mom, you have let the two caregivers go. And so let's talk. And when I listened, I learned that I don't know better than she does. And then you secretly think, oh, yes, I do. Mm-hmm. You don't, because you haven't been there yet. And so by listening, you can start on a different path. And we are not always going to agree with our older parents. And that's why ultimately we each can only live this one life that was given to us. And so there is a little bit of Mel Robbins' let them theory in this, even when you don't agree. And the confounding factor is, of course, cognitive impairment. So it is not normal to get cognitive impairment as we get older, but it is common, especially as we get to be in our 90s. So with cognitive impairment, it is still not a second childhood. You're still more adult than ever. Therefore, it's not role reversal. But of course, with judgment impaired, it adds a level of complexity, which actually gives even more importance to listening and trying to a little bit go into the world of the older adult living with cognitive impairment to see what their reality is like, and then do these problem solvings from there. So it's a big topic, and we're all really learning, and I daily stumble. And so it's my own mistakes that I a lot of times go, don't do that.
Yeah. But even that, I know that it is such a complex thing to deal with cognitive impairment and become a caretaker. But just to have that foundation or that reminder that, you've got to involve them in the conversation. And it takes patience, and it takes listening, and it takes, holding back the eye rolls and going no, that's insane. What do you, and just really thinking that we know better. And it's a challenge for us and an opportunity for us to grow and meet just a different challenge, And
starting with our own aging. That's why at first, the publisher had said, do you want to write a book that teaches younger people to deal with their older parents? But I don't, because I think the first step is understanding that it's not them, it's us, right? So we're not othering older people. We're all aging people. And when you start to see yourself and understand that you too, it's just people, and you're just you happen to catch me at 56, and just as easily you could have caught me at 16 or 96, right? So I think recognizing that our parents aren't these real such different, they're just people. They're just at a different stage of it. And if people have the capacity, they don't have cognitive impairment, and they're doing something that you don't like or that you don't think is safe, we've just established they already have capacity to make decisions that you don't like. If they don't have that, then sometimes you can use cognitive impairment for good. And I give the example of you can sometimes I was with somebody this week, and it was really super sunny, unlike today. And she was squinting so much, and she lives with Alzheimer's disease. And so I said, she had her sunglasses. I said, would you like to put your sunglasses on? No, I don't want to put my sunglasses on. And so I watched her, and tears are running down. And so I then waited a while, and then I could come at it a different way. And actually, in this instance, I tried about 4 different ways, and then the 4th hit perfectly. And so I think people don't realize that sometimes, like with love, you can even approach cognitive impairment in a way that makes the relationship work. So
I love that. Thank you. That's so helpful. And I do love that we're all relating. We're all on this continuum. So we're all aging from the time we, come out of the womb. And so it's just this like, it's not an othering, and it's not a like, divisiveness of chapters. It's just like we're all in this continuum, learning and adapting on how we relate to each other.
Yes. I thought of one more example is I have an older sister who is like the boss of our family, and because she's fabulous and she has great judgment, and she's, she does everything great. So she doesn't live nearby, and my mom lives in a home by herself that has very treacherous floors and stairs. And so my sister said, Mom can't be at home alone. What if she falls, Kerry? You can't. No. And so then I was like, well, let's sit down with Mom. So we sat down with my mom, who doesn't have cognitive impairment. And my mom said, I know that, and I am choosing. And if I fall, that is my choice. And when you are older, you can decide what you want to do. And my sister said, well, what if you hit your head and you're all bloody and whatever? And my mom said, I know. Yes, I am choosing for myself what I want to do. And when we had that conversation, she was 80 years old, which at the time we thought that was 16 years ago. And she has lived in her home, and it could still happen any day, but she gets to choose what her older age is like, even if that's not what we would choose for ourselves. So it was a big eye opener to go, okay, I cannot bubble wrap my mom, and she's going to do what she wants to do because she has the capacity to decide.
Yeah. And that's that autonomy, right? That that makes you feel strong. That makes you feel powerful. But when people start to take that away because they think that they know better, or they're worried, they're projecting their fear onto you, that diminishes that power that they hold. It's that, I think you had the psychological well-being model with, I don't know if you want to just quickly go through those as we wrap up, but I thought those were so helpful to know.
Well, there's a research that Carol Rife out of the University of Wisconsin came up with the psychological well-being. And she really looks at from different points of view, and that has done all this like really rigorous study of what matters to people. So like their environmental mastery and their sense of purpose. And so using that model, we kind of then took the aging literature, and then that's how we came out with those 4 areas. So I was so grateful for her incredible 40 years of research. And so when I reached out to her and said, I would love to use your model, and if you would want to write a book with me, and she was so lovely. She said, I'm an academic, and you go ahead and write a book that would be for not academics, but I'm too busy doing the research. And I remember that day thinking, yes, we all play a little different role, and each of our parts is like a little grain of sand, but together we are changing the way that we approach older age. And it's going to you need to be almost countercultural to step into your own aging, and to stop with things like I'm having a senior moment, or you look good for your age, or you don't even look your age, right? Like after you all listen to this podcast, you're going to start hearing other people saying these ageist things, and you're going to hear yourself in your brain saying these ageist things. And the good news is that you can choose to counter those with, it's like cognitive behavioral therapy that we do for ourselves, where we can say, like when I look in the mirror and think, oh no, I've got all these lines on my neck, I then say to myself, of course you do. It's because that's how your neck bends. And at 56, of course, that skin's been around for a long time. And 56 is a baby, by the way.
Yeah.
So we need to catch ourselves in order to maximize joy. because the alternative is suffering. And that I've seen enough of.
Yeah. I love this message to end on. Because it's like accepting all of you and accepting the reality of this kind of just aging, and stop demonizing it, stop resisting it. Resisting is what causes dis-ease, right? So to start to embrace and start to love and start to really change the self-talk and what we're putting out into the world, joking or otherwise, it's like, I mean, I'm definitely committed to this for myself, and then I'm excited to start to relate to like my parents in a different way. So it's such a gift that you have given me today. Thank you.
You have given me the gift of healing and all that you share and all the learning. And so I'm just so grateful to have this time with you today.
And one more thing, one more small world thing, was your husband's father, who recently passed away, was he the principal of Wilson High School?
Yes.
He and I loved each other. I was the ASB president. Dr. Burnight was my principal. We were like I loved him. And so when I found that out, I was like, Burnight, oh my gosh. And then I found out that he recently passed away. But what a beautiful man that was.
Oh.
He was like, just talk about light in your eyes. I mean, he was such just a light on this planet. I loved him.
That means so much to me, and I can't wait to share that with my husband and with his mom and his brother, because remembering people fondly, that matters a lot.
Yeah. We were high school kids and we loved our principal. He was special. So
wow.
I know. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Burnight. And where can people find you? And please get JoySpan, because we really do need to change this conversation and dialogue we have internally and as a society on aging.
Yeah. So that book is sold everywhere, or you could go to your library for it. And it is, when people ask what age is it for, I have readers in their 20s and readers in their 100s. So it makes a nice gift. And it's not like, saying, oh, you're older, you need this book at all. I would just say, this is a book about maximizing joy. And a place that I share information is on Instagram. So I have an Instagram called _Gerontologist. And so it's these principles, but more interestingly, it's the people who are doing these things. So a lot of times I'll do my 96-year-old mother, who is really practicing all these things for the last 20 years. And then other people. So that's another way. And I so welcome any input. And this drkerryburnight.com is the place that gives information if you had any questions or needed any resources or anything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for all that you do, all the healing.
Thank you. Thank you.